Imagine being a newly appointed sheriff, driving through your jurisdiction after a long day of serving the community, only to be pulled over by a local officer who instantly assumes you've stolen your own car. What would you do if, despite your badge and position, you were treated like a criminal simply because of your race? And when the truth finally comes to light, how do you think that officer will react upon discovering they've just racially profiled their own sheriff? This gripping story will make you question how deep prejudice runs in law enforcement and what it truly takes for justice to prevail. Before we dive into this powerful narrative, let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. And if you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe. You won't want to miss our upcoming stories that expose truth and challenge our perspectives. Nathan Mitchell adjusted his collar in the rearview mirror of his brand new Audi RS7. The pristine vehicle was barely 2 weeks old, a reward to himself after being appointed as the first African-American sheriff of Pine Valley County. The leather seat still carried that distinct new car scent, and the quiet hum of the German-engineered engine reminded him of how far he'd come from his humble beginnings in law enforcement. He'd just finished his first month as sheriff, a day filled with departmental meetings, community outreach programs, and the endless task of reforming a system that had grown stagnant under previous leadership. The drive through the winding roads of Pine Valley usually offered him a moment of peace, a chance to reflect on the changes he hoped to implement in the department. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the dense pine trees that lined the county roads, their branches creating patterns on his hood as he drove at a leisurely pace. Nathan had always loved this part of his day, the transition between his public persona as sheriff and the simple pleasure of heading home to his wife Rebecca and their 2 daughters. But today, that peaceful moment would be shattered by the harsh flash of red and blue lights in his rearview mirror. His heart skipped a beat, not from fear, but from a familiar sense of resignation. Even in his position, even in his own jurisdiction, some things never changed. He pulled over without hesitation, his mind already racing through the possibilities of what could follow. The cruiser pulled up behind Nathan's Audi, its lights painting the interior of his car in alternating splashes of red and blue. Through his rearview mirror, he could see Officer Rebecca Danvers approach, her hand resting deliberately close to her holstered weapon. Nathan recognized her. She'd been with the department for 3 years, though they'd never directly interacted since his appointment as sheriff. "License and registration," she barked, her flashlight beam cutting through his window with unnecessary intensity. Nathan reached slowly for his glove compartment, his movements deliberate and measured. Even as sheriff, he knew the drill all too well. "Officer Danvers," he began, keeping his voice steady and professional. "I'm Sheriff Mitchell. I believe there's been a misunderstanding." The flashlight beam didn't waver. "Step out of the vehicle," she commanded, ignoring his words entirely. Nathan's fingers tightened slightly on the steering wheel as he processed her response. "Officer, I'm your sheriff. If there's an issue, we can discuss this professionally. Out, now." Her tone left no room for argument, her hand shifting closer to her weapon. Nathan felt a familiar knot forming in his stomach, a mixture of frustration, anger, and something deeper, more painful. Here he was, the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in Pine Valley County, being treated like a common suspect. Before we continue with what happens next, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Stories like these shed light on important issues that affect our society every day. Nathan opened his door slowly, emerging with his hands visible. The cool evening air carried the scent of pine needles and approaching rain, but he barely noticed it over the sound of his own heartbeat. Officer Danvers took a step back, her posture rigid with suspicion. "We've had reports of a vehicle matching this description involved in several high-end auto thefts," she stated, her eyes scanning him with barely concealed prejudice. "Officer Danvers," Nathan spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of his position. "I purchased this vehicle 2 weeks ago from Valley Imports. You can verify my identity with dispatch. I'm your sheriff." He could see neighbors beginning to peer through their windows, curtains twitching as they witnessed the scene unfolding on their quiet street. The humiliation burned deeper than the evening chill. He had worked for 20 years to reach this position, climbing through the ranks, facing countless obstacles and prejudices along the way. He'd been appointed sheriff with the promise of bringing change to the department, of building bridges between law enforcement and the community. Yet here he stood, hands in plain sight, being treated like a criminal in his own jurisdiction. "Hands on the hood," Officer Danvers ordered, seemingly deaf to his words. Nathan's jaw clenched, but he complied, knowing that escalation would only make things worse. As he leaned forward against his own vehicle, he could feel the eyes of his neighbors burning into his back. People he'd greeted at community meetings, parents whose children attended school with his daughters, all watching as their new sheriff was humiliated in the street. "This is unnecessary," Nathan stated firmly, maintaining his composure even as anger simmered beneath the surface. "Contact dispatch. Verify my identity. I'm Sheriff Nathan Mitchell, and this situation is quickly becoming a serious issue." Officer Danvers paused, something in his tone finally registering. She reached for her radio, her eyes never leaving him as she called in. The response was immediate and clear. 10-4, Officer Danvers. "That's Sheriff Mitchell you've pulled over. Stand down immediately." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan could hear the blood rushing in his ears, could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He straightened up slowly, adjusting his jacket with deliberate movements. Officer Danvers stood frozen, her face draining of color as the reality of the situation sank in. Officer Danvers lowered her hand from her radio, her confidence visibly shaken. "Sir, I apologize. There was a report of a stolen vehicle matching your description." Her voice had lost its earlier authority, replaced by a mixture of embarrassment and fear. Nathan took a deep breath, his years of experience helping him maintain his composure. "Officer Danvers, I'd like you to meet me in my office first thing tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We need to have a serious discussion about what just transpired here." His voice was calm but carried the unmistakable weight of authority. As he spoke, another patrol car pulled up to the scene, and Captain James Reynolds stepped out, his face etched with concern. The captain had been with the department for 20 years and had initially supported Nathan's appointment as sheriff. "Sheriff Mitchell," Reynolds called out, approaching quickly. "I came as soon as I heard the radio call. Is everything all right?" His eyes darted between Nathan and Officer Danvers, assessing the situation. "No, James, everything is not all right," Nathan replied, his voice steady but firm. "What happened here tonight goes beyond a simple misunderstanding. This is exactly the kind of incident that undermines everything we're trying to build in this department." The growing crowd of onlookers had begun to murmur, some recording with their phones. Nathan knew this incident would be all over social media within hours. He'd worked hard to build trust between law enforcement and the community, especially among minorities, and now this incident threatened to unravel months of progress. If you're finding this story as compelling as it is important, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. We bring you powerful narratives that matter, stories that need to be heard. There's something deeper. Would you care to explain why 78% of your stops involve minority drivers in a county that's only 23% minority? Danvers shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Sir, I follow probable cause in every stop. The numbers don't tell the whole story." "You're right, Officer Danvers. They don't tell the whole story. Which is why I spent most of last night reviewing your body camera footage from the past month." Nathan leaned forward, his voice firm but measured. "I saw a pattern, and it's not just about race. You seem particularly interested in expensive vehicles with minority drivers. Want to tell me why?" Before Officer Danvers could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Captain Reynolds entered, his face grave. "Sheriff, sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The FBI just arrived. They want to speak with you immediately." Two FBI agents sat across from Nathan in his office, their presence adding another layer of tension to an already strained morning. Agent Catherine Walsh, a sharp-featured woman in her 40s, placed a thick file on his desk. "Sheriff Mitchell, we've been investigating a potential car theft ring operating in several counties, including Pine Valley, but we've found something far more concerning." "Officer Danvers, you're dismissed for now," Nathan said, his eyes fixed on the file. But don't leave the building. As she exited, Agent Walsh opened the file, revealing photographs, financial records, and police reports. Over the past 2 years, Agent Walsh explained, we've noticed a pattern of high-end vehicle thefts across 3 counties. But what caught our attention wasn't the thefts themselves. It was the response from local law enforcement, or rather, the lack of response. Her partner, Agent Marcus Torres, stepped forward. Several officers in your department, including Officer Danvers, have been systematically targeting minority drivers in expensive vehicles. But here's where it gets interesting. The stops always follow the same pattern, and they always happen in specific areas. Nathan felt his stomach tighten as he examined the evidence. The FBI had mapped out every traffic stop, creating a clear pattern that couldn't be coincidental. You think some of my officers are involved with the theft ring? If you're finding this revelation as shocking as we did, make sure to hit that subscribe button. The truth that's about to unfold will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about law enforcement. It's worse than that, Agent Walsh continued. We believe certain officers are working with a sophisticated criminal organization. They profile potential targets, gather information during these routine stops, and pass it along. The organization then uses this information to plan their thefts. Nathan's mind raced back to Officer Danvers' statistics. That explains the focus on expensive vehicles and minority drivers. They're less likely to be believed if they report police harassment. Exactly, Agent Torres confirmed. But there's more. We've traced substantial deposits into several officers' offshore accounts. This goes beyond a few corrupt cops. Someone high up in your department is protecting this operation. Nathan stood, walking to his office window. The morning sun illuminated the parking lot where his officers went about their routine duties. How many of them were involved? Who could he trust? We need your help, Sheriff, Agent Walsh said. You're new to the department, not part of their established network. Plus, after last night's incident, you have a legitimate reason to investigate your officers without raising suspicion. You want me to run an internal investigation while feeding you information, Nathan stated, turning back to face them. Yes, but you need to be careful, Agent Torres warned. These people have operated unchecked for years. They won't hesitate to eliminate any threat to their operation. As if to emphasize his point, Nathan's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Back off while you can. Some things are better left alone. Nathan showed the message to the agents. Looks like they're already watching. Good. Let them watch. I didn't become sheriff to look the other way. Over the next few days, Nathan began his own quiet investigation. He reviewed personnel files, examined financial records, and tracked patrol patterns. The more he dug, the more disturbing the picture became. Late one night, as he was leaving the office, Captain Reynolds approached him in the parking lot. You're asking a lot of questions, Nathan, Reynolds said, his tone friendly but his eyes hard. Sometimes questions can be dangerous in this line of work. Is that a threat, James? Nathan asked, noting how the captain's hand rested near his weapon. Just friendly advice. You're doing good work here, making changes. Would be a shame if something happened to derail that progress. As Reynolds walked away, Nathan's resolve hardened. He typed a quick message to Agent Walsh. You're right. This goes deep. But I think we've only scratched the surface. That night, while reviewing more files in his home office, Nathan discovered something that made his blood run cold. The car theft ring wasn't just about stealing vehicles, it was a front for something much bigger. The operation was moving drugs, weapons, and laundering money through Pine Valley, using the police department as protection. A knock at his door startled him. Maria entered, concern etched on her face. Nathan, someone left this on our porch. She handed him an envelope containing a single photograph. Their daughters at school, taken earlier that day. They're involving our family now, Nathan said, his voice tight with anger. Call your sister in Atlanta. Take the girls and stay with her for a while. I'm not leaving you here alone, Maria protested. Please, Maria. I can't focus on stopping these people if I'm worried about you and the girls. I promise I'll be careful." As he watched his family drive away the next morning, Nathan knew he'd crossed a point of no return. The corruption in his department had tentacles reaching into every aspect of Pine Valley, and he was one of the few people in a position to stop it. But first, he needed to understand just how deep this conspiracy went, and more importantly, who was at the top pulling the strings. Little did he know, the answer would shake Pine Valley to its very foundation. The next morning, Nathan sat in his office reviewing surveillance footage that Agent Walsh had provided. Each frame revealed more connections in the web of corruption plaguing Pine Valley. His phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. "Last warning. Walk away or lose everything." Before he could respond, Deputy Chief Lauren Parker knocked on his door. She'd been with the department for 25 years, serving under 3 different sheriffs. "Got a minute?" she asked, closing the door behind her. "What's on your mind, Lauren?" Nathan noticed her unusual nervousness, the way her eyes darted around the room. "I know what you're investigating," she said quietly, taking a seat. "And I have information you need. But not here. Meet me at Riverside Park tonight at 10. Come alone." Later that evening, as Nathan approached the designated meeting spot, the park was eerily quiet. Lauren stood near the old gazebo, her figure barely visible in the dim lighting. But something felt wrong. Years of law enforcement experience had honed Nathan's instincts, and right now they were screaming danger. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. The revelations that follow will leave you questioning everything about law enforcement and justice. "I followed your investigation," Lauren began, her voice trembling. "The car theft ring, the targeted stops, it's all connected to something bigger. Pine Valley isn't just a quiet mountain town anymore. It's become a major hub for an international criminal organization." "Who's running it?" Nathan asked, keeping his distance. "Think higher than the police department. The mayor, key council members, even judges. They're all involved. Pine Valley's location makes it perfect for their operation. Remote enough to avoid federal attention, but close enough to major cities for distribution." Suddenly, headlights flooded the area. 3 black SUVs surrounded them, and armed men emerged from the shadows. Captain Reynolds stepped forward, his weapon drawn. "I'm sorry, Nathan. You should have listened to our warnings." Lauren moved to stand beside Reynolds, her earlier nervousness replaced by cold determination. "We tried to give you an out," she said. "You could have just played along, taken your cut like everyone else." "That's not why I became sheriff," Nathan replied, his mind racing through escape options. "I swore to protect this community, not exploit it." "Noble," Reynolds sneered. "But nobility doesn't pay the bills. This operation has made a lot of people very rich. Did you really think we'd let you destroy that?" As the armed men closed in, Nathan caught a glimpse of movement in the trees. Agent Walsh's team had been monitoring the meeting, and now they emerged, weapons drawn. "FBI, drop your weapons." Chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed through the park as both sides took cover. Nathan rolled behind a concrete planter, drawing his weapon. Through the chaos, he spotted Reynolds and Lauren making a break for one of the SUVs. "This isn't over," Reynolds shouted as they sped away, leaving their men to face the FBI. In the aftermath, Agent Walsh approached Nathan. "You okay?" she asked, holstering her weapon. "Yeah, but Reynolds and Parker got away. They'll warn the others." "Actually," Agent Torres interrupted, joining them with a smile. "That's exactly what we wanted. We've been monitoring their communications. Their escape just gave us probable cause to move on their entire network." Over the next 24 hours, Pine Valley witnessed the largest law enforcement operation in its history. FBI teams raided homes and offices across town, arresting council members, police officers, and business leaders. The mayor was taken into custody during an emergency council meeting, the look of shock on his face captured by dozens of cameras. The evidence seized painted a disturbing picture. Pine Valley had been transformed into a sophisticated criminal enterprise, with corrupt officials using their positions to facilitate drug trafficking, money laundering, and other illegal activities. The targeted traffic stops were just one part of a larger system designed to protect their operations while intimidating potential witnesses. But the case wasn't complete. Reynolds and Lauren were still at large, and Nathan knew they wouldn't go down without a fight. They had too much to lose. Late that night, as Nathan sat in his office reviewing arrest reports, his phone rang. It was Maria. "They found us," she whispered, fear evident in her voice. "Someone's trying to break in." Nathan's heart stopped. "Where are you?" "Your sister's lake house. The girls are hiding in the panic room." But the line went dead. Racing through the night, Nathan's patrol car tore down the winding road leading to his sister's lake house. Agent Walsh and Torres followed close behind, their sirens piercing the darkness. His phone's GPS showed they were still 10 minutes away, and every second felt like an eternity. "We've got units converging from all directions." Agent Walsh's voice crackled over the radio. "And state police have set up roadblocks on all major routes out of the area." Nathan's mind raced with images of Maria and the girls. The panic room was secure. He'd installed it himself after years of handling dangerous cases. But he knew Reynolds and Lauren were desperate. Desperate people make dangerous choices. As they approached the lake house, Nathan cut his lights, signaling the others to do the same. Through the trees, he could see 2 SUVs parked haphazardly in the driveway. The front door was splintered, hanging off its hinges. If you're on the edge of your seat, make sure to subscribe. This conclusion will show you just how far someone will go to protect what matters most. "Maria," Nathan called out as he entered, weapon drawn. "It's me." "In here, Sheriff," Reynolds' voice responded from the living room. "Your family's fine for now. Come in where we can see you." Alone. Nathan moved forward, his training warring with his instincts as a husband and father. Reynolds stood in the center of the room, holding Maria at gunpoint. Lauren paced near the hallway leading to the panic room, her weapon trained on the door. "Let them go, James," Nathan said, keeping his voice steady. "You know there's no way out of this." "There's always a way out," Reynolds replied, tightening his grip on Maria. "We just need some insurance for our trip across the border. Nothing personal, just business." "Business?" Nathan's voice hardened. "Is that what you call terrorizing innocent people? Using your badge to help criminals? Betraying everything we swore to protect?" "You don't understand," Lauren interjected. "We built something here. Pine Valley was dying before we took control. The money we brought in saved this town." "You destroyed this town," Nathan corrected. "You turned it into a criminal enterprise. Used innocent people as pawns. Made them live in fear of the very people sworn to protect them." As Nathan spoke, he noticed Maria's slight nod. She'd been married to a law enforcement officer long enough to read the situation. Reynolds was too focused on Nathan to notice her tensing, preparing. "The girls are safe in the panic room," Maria said suddenly. "You'll never get to them. It's over." In that moment of distraction, Maria drove her elbow into Reynolds' solar plexus. Nathan lunged forward as Lauren turned her weapon toward Maria. 2 shots rang out, one from Nathan's gun, striking Lauren's shoulder, and one from Agent Walsh through the window, disarming Reynolds. The takedown was swift. Within minutes, both Reynolds and Lauren were in custody, their final attempt at escape thwarted. As Nathan held his family close, he could hear the approaching sirens of backup units. "I'm so proud of you," Maria whispered, the girls clinging to them both. "You did it. You really did it." In the days that followed, Pine Valley began the long process of healing. The corruption had run deep, but its exposure offered a chance for real change. Nathan led the effort to rebuild the police department, implementing new oversight measures and community engagement programs. The FBI investigation revealed the full scope of the operation. Over 50 people were indicted, including police officers, politicians, and business leaders. The evidence seized led to investigations in other communities, exposing similar corruption networks across the state. 1 month later, Nathan stood before a community meeting in the Pine Valley Town Hall. The room was packed with citizens eager to hear from the sheriff who had risked everything to protect their community. What happened in Pine Valley didn't occur overnight, Nathan began. It grew in the shadows, fed by apathy and fear. But its exposure showed us something important, the power of standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. He paused, looking out at the faces of his community. We have a chance now to rebuild, to create the kind of law enforcement agency this community deserves. One that truly protects and serves all its citizens, regardless of their race, wealth, or status. The applause that followed wasn't just for Nathan. It was for every person who had helped expose the truth, every citizen who had stood up to corruption, every officer who had chosen integrity over profit. As Nathan left the town hall that evening, he saw Officer Danvers waiting by his car. She had been one of the few officers to cooperate with the investigation, her experience during the traffic stop having opened her eyes to the deeper problems within the department. "Thank you," she said simply, "for showing us what real leadership looks like." Nathan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Pine Valley would never be the same, and that was exactly what it needed. Remember, corruption flourishes in darkness, but it only takes one person willing to shine a light to make a difference. Thank you for joining us for this powerful story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you believe in the importance of exposing truth and fighting for justice.